Hi, my name is Dr. Ryan Riley, and I want to welcome you to an Introduction to Basic Cryptography. Now, this is a 4-week online course designed to help you get a grasp of the basic fundamentals of modern cryptography. So let me use this lecture to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover in the course, and then a brief introduction to just cover the basics of security. So first, I want to cover instructor information, a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Dr. Ryan Riley. I'm an assistant professor of computer science and engineering at Qatar University in Doha, Qatar. Now, I teach computer science and engineering courses as my regular job, and I also do research in the area of security. And so my real love is teaching security material. And so I've put together this course because of that. So at a high level, this course is an online course meant to give you an overview of cryptography. And it's designed for people that are in information technology already. So maybe you're an IT worker in a company, or maybe you just have an interest in IT in general, and you feel like, I want to have a basic idea of what cryptography is all about. If that's you, then this course is for you. So let's talk about some prerequisites. I recommend that you have a general background in computing and at least a little bit of college mathematics. This is not a real computing or math heavy course, but having a background in those in some way will be really useful for you. But the most important thing you need to have is a desire to learn and to think, and to spend time thinking about the material that we're going to do in this course. I have 3 main goals for this course that I want you to get out of it. First, I want you to learn the building blocks of modern cryptography. Second, I want you to become familiar enough with them to follow along in technical discussions. So I frequently talk to people who work in information technology who say, I had some vendor come in and talk to me about some security tool they have, and they started talking about cryptography stuff, and I had no idea what they were saying. And that's not a fun place to be in. So I want this course to help give you at least the basics so that you can follow along and understand what they're saying, and hopefully even be critical of some of the claims that they make that might not be valid. And I also want this course to give you a strong basis for further study. Cryptography is a deep topic, and so this just scratches the surface of it, but I want it to be a strong basis that you can use to dive deeper if you decide to. Now, let's talk about some things that aren't course goals. Now, I don't have a goal that you're going to become a master of cryptography in just 4 weeks. This is meant to just be an introduction to some of the basic building blocks. I also don't have it as a course goal that you'll build programs that use cryptography or figure out how to use cryptography in your web applications or anything like that. There's no programming here, but you can do that on your own, and I encourage you to, actually. There's at least one lecture where I give you a brief snippet of Python code that uses some hashing cryptography, for example. And I'd love to see people in this course go beyond what I'm teaching and practice a little bit with some hands-on implementation. This is also not a course to learn about hacking or cracking computers or how to break cryptography or things like that. We do discuss cryptanalysis at least a little bit, which is breaking cryptography, but this is not a hacking class. Some people look around and say, ooh, security, cryptography, that must be a hacking class. This is not a hacking class. It's to give you a background in cryptography. So let's talk a little bit about security in general. So when we think of the term security, the first thing we usually think about is real-world security, right? Which is basically protecting valuable things. Now, those valuable things could be physical things like money, jewelry, cars, your house, et cetera, et cetera. It could be people. People are valuable things that we want to protect. It could even be access to a place. For example, a parking lot may have security in place to make sure that the right people park there. Now, we tend to think an item is secure if no one can take it, harm it, or use it without our permission. So those are the things that we think about when we think of a physical item or even a person and think about it being secure. Now, in computers, there's only one type of thing in the computer world, and that thing is information. So when we talk about computer security, we're talking about the one digital asset we have, and that's information. Protecting information is hard, and the reason it's hard is because it tends to be stored on small portable devices. So you'll see all these news leaks about, a laptop was lost at a company or stolen or things like that. There's a lot of information on there. Another problem with protecting information is that a lot of it can be accessed electronically. At companies or things like that, a lot of information is now online. If it can be accessed electronically, it's easier to potentially lose or have someone be able to get it without your permission. The internet has made this even harder. because the internet has connected all sorts of things. And so now a lot of information that was traditionally maybe not accessible because it was needed to be more secure is now more accessible than ever. Whenever we talk about computer security, there are three basic security properties. The first is confidentiality. And confidentiality means preventing the unauthorized reading of data. The second is integrity. And integrity is where we try to prevent the unauthorized modification of data. Now, hopefully you can see the difference between those two. In integrity, we want to make sure that data isn't changed without our permission. In confidentiality, we want to make sure that it isn't read without our permission. And the last of the three security properties is availability, which is where we want to ensure that the data we're protecting is available to authorized people when they need it or want it. So let's do some examples with these three. We'll start with confidentiality. So let's pretend that we have two actors, Alice and Bob. And now, Alice and Bob, they're kids in a school situation. And Bob kind of has a little crush on Alice. You may remember when you were a kid and you were in class, there may have been someone in the class that you kind of thought was interesting. And so Bob says, I really like Alice, and I want to send her a love note. But I want it to be a secret, because I don't want anybody else in the class to know. My friends might make fun of me, might be embarrassing, so he wants to send a secret note that he can send to Alice and only Alice can read. If anyone else happens to find it or something, they can't read it. So that would be an example of confidentiality. Bob wants his note to be confidential. No one can read it except the intended recipient, Alice. Now, another thing that Bob wants is integrity. Because let's pretend that after Bob sends his note, he comes into school one day and finds a note back sitting on his desk. At which point Bob might pause and say, well, I just found this here on my desk. How do I know the note's actually from Alice? How do I know that somebody else didn't write a note pretending to be from Alice? Or how do I know that somebody else didn't modify this note from Alice? In that case, Bob wants integrity, because he's potentially a little bit concerned that the note isn't authentic. So he wants integrity. He wants some way to verify the note really is from Alice. And the idea of the third critical piece for security is availability. And in this case, Bob just wants to make sure that he can communicate with Alice whenever he wants. Now, in a school scenario, who might be the person who would prevent Alice and Bob from, say, talking or passing notes during class? That would be the teacher. So in this case, Bob wants availability. He wants to make sure that there's no one stopping the flow of his communication. Okay, so let's sum up. This course is an introduction to cryptography. It's meant to give you a good overall overview. And the next lecture will immediately jump into some simple cryptography that you can do by hand and to give you a background in exactly how cryptography works. And we also talked about in this lecture, three main properties in computer security, and that's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Thanks.